On July 23rd, Major League Baseball launched this season in the middle of a global pandemic. The league tried embracing the new normal with fake fans, regular testing, and social distancing. But now, 2.5 weeks later, the MLB is not exactly hitting it out of the park.
Tonight's game between the New York Yankees and the Philadelphia Phillies has again been delayed.
The MLB is putting the Marlins season on hold.
There are serious questions in the sports world about whether Major League Baseball can go on.
So what exactly went wrong? First, the Marlins temporarily suspended their season after several players came down with the virus. Then, 2 Phillies staffers tested positive following a game with the Marlins. And now the Cardinals are reporting that at least 10 of their players have COVID-19. There were rumors the team hit up a casino, but the Cardinals denied those claims.
And I can't say that everybody was ultra responsible at every single wake and turn, but I can tell you this is a responsible group.
However, Marlins CEO Derek Jeter admitted his players were not always wearing masks or social distancing due to a false sense of security.
You're in planes, you're in buses, you're in different hotels. It's a risk that we take.
Regardless of the cause, the outbreak has called the rest of the season into question.
There's real anxiety for me, for all my teammates. I think we've found it very difficult to focus on baseball at all the last couple of days. I know for me personally, I don't feel comfortable with where we're at.
So far, the MLB has postponed more than 20 games, and as cases climb, some players are deciding to sit out the rest of the year. There are even reports the MLB commissioner is considering shutting down the season if things don't get better.
They did their very best to put the best protocols in place to protect the safety and the welfare of the players and the personnel.
So what's the MLB doing to prevent striking out? Well, they're tightening safety guidelines, like limiting the size of travel parties and mandating masks in dugouts and bullpens, and threatening to ban players from the season if they ignore these new rules. Critics say this all comes down to one thing: baseball does not have a bubble. Other sports leagues like the NHL and Major League Soccer are isolating players within a strict area to prevent any exposure to the virus. And it seems to be working. Perhaps the best example of this is the NBA based at Disney World. 0 players have tested positive for coronavirus since teams entered the bubble last month.
People ask me how was the bubble, and I said it's 2020. You know, everything is different, and you have to be able to adjust to it.
The MLB did entertain this kind of system, but ultimately decided against it, arguing there were too many locations and players to deal with. However, with months left in the season, baseball might need to reevaluate its game plan.
It's important that we are able to provide a source of entertainment and an outlet for people that are dealing with such a challenging time in their lives. But at the same time, the health and safety should be the top priority for all of us at all times.
Coaches fighting to save their seasons, athletes worried about losing their scholarships, fans disappointed as they imagine a fall without football. College conferences are still trying to figure out whether to put their players back on the field. NBC News correspondent Morgan Chesky is at the University of North Texas's campus in Denton. Morgan, what is the latest today from the conference heads? What's going on?
Yeah. Allison, we finally confirmed a lot of the rumors we've been hearing from yesterday, and that is within the past several minutes, the Big Ten Conference, one of the Power Five in the country, has officially announced that it has postponed fall sports, and that includes football. Keep in mind, these are schools that bring hundreds of thousands of people to games each and every Saturday. I've just pulled up the statement that the conference put out just minutes ago. I want to read to you in part what it says, saying that we know how significant the student-athlete experience can be in shaping the future of the talented young women and men who compete in the Big Ten. Everyone associated with the Big Ten Conference and its member institutions is committed to getting everyone back to competition as soon as it is safe to do so. And they say that winter and spring sports are still being evaluated at this time. Allison, this is an incredible decision because other major conferences have kind of been waiting on the sidelines, if you will, watching to see what the Big Ten will do. And now that they've come out and officially made this decision, it essentially draws a line in the sand for a lot of the other schools around the country as to whether or not they're going to have a season. There had been a lot of talk on, will there be just a postponing of a few games so they can put some sort of protocol into place. But as of right now, one of the largest conferences in the country has decided better to wait it out until at least spring and proceed that way. Allison?
And Morgan, the Big Ten making this decision while they were under some intense pressure. There have been some big voices, important people calling for college football to come back. If you could tell us a little bit more about that and what the argument has been on that side of things.
Well, Allison, you're talking about some of the most historic programs in the country that are part of what is a $4 billion business. That's the estimated amount that college football brings in from an economic standpoint all across the country to these communities. We know that the University of Michigan coach Jim Harbaugh, an outspoken advocate on letting his team go forth and play, essentially saying that they could create an environment that was safer for the student athletes on campus, that was more controlled than letting them go home, where there's essentially no rules in place to make sure they are being safe. Meanwhile, top players in the country, Trevor Lawrence, the Clemson quarterback, who is expected to go #1 in the upcoming NFL draft, came out and said that there is a safe way to play this game if we all get together and have a conversation. He also was trying to lobby for a college football players association to be created, essentially the same as an NFL players union that would lobby on the players' behalf and try to put some rules and regulations in place to make sure that those players could actually see the field come Saturday. But as it stands right now, everything is up in the air. The only certainty we know at this point from the major conference standpoint is that the Big Ten will be quiet come Saturdays this fall.
Yeah, and Morgan, I mean, you mentioned this, the economic impact, obviously devastating for student athletes whose futures, who are you know, their whole lives, in effect, revolve around playing football. But, I mean, you mentioned the money there and the communities. You think about Ann Arbor in Michigan, for example, and what football means to that community come August, September.
Yeah, Allison, there's a study that looked at Ann Arbor, Michigan, where University of Michigan is, and they came back and said that football alone brings in an estimated $80 million, and that's just to one small city in Michigan. I want you to look at that from an entire country standpoint and realize that it's not just the players, it's not just the parents of the players or the coaches that are going to be looking at this. It's going to be the small business owner that has a restaurant or a shop a few blocks away from the stadium who really makes up a large portion of their annual income from the fans who come into town for those home games. This is what we're going to see play out. I'm reminded of traveling to Stillwater, Oklahoma, where Oklahoma State is a member, part of the Big 12 conference there. That community is more or less built around the university there with a massive turnout, tens of thousands of people for home games. So the trickle down is going to be tough, and we really have yet to see how far it will go down as we look around the country now to see what other conferences will do following the Big Ten's decision. Allison?
Yeah, and Morgan, these are cities, these are small businesses, these are towns that are struggling already because of this pandemic. A big decision from the Big Ten today. Morgan Chesky, thanks so much. University of Arizona students are heading back to campus, but they will need to get tested for the coronavirus first. NBC News reporter Vaughn Hilliard joining me now from the university's Tucson campus. Vaughn, we're talking about a whole lot of students here. What is this testing process like?
A testing process is a weird way to, I guess, be introduced to college orientation, isn't it? This is what, though, is taking place behind us here, Allison. This is week #1. This week is when folks are moving back onto campus and coming back into Tucson to begin classes again. And what you see here is the university setting up an antigen testing process where all students living on campus, and they're expecting right now about 5,300 of them, have to come through these doors and get tested. That process takes about an hour to get those lab results, and at that point, they'll then be able to move into the dorms here on campus. You know, this is different than a restaurant. This is different than a water park. This is different than a gym. You know, essentially, you are welcoming folks into a professional environment, also a social environment, an educational environment here, in which you're dealing with a student population that is expected to be around 20,000, which is about half of what their normal enrollment is here at the University of Arizona, but still 20,000 folks descending into this heart of Tucson here. I had a conversation that I want to let you listen to part of with Dr. Richard Carmona. He's a former U.S. Surgeon General under the Bush administration, but then he's a Tucson resident now, and he's actually been tapped by the university to lead their reentry effort here. I want to let you hear directly from him in terms of what is here at stake on the campus.
Oh, it's going to be very different. You won't see the opening football game. You won't probably see all of the other social activities. Fraternities, sororities will be different. All of those groups have been contacted to make sure that they understand that they have to adjust their social behaviors to this new world order so that we don't inadvertently spread infection.
Dr. Carmona was emphasizing that it's going to take the students, the faculty, everybody around this campus, the diligence in order to keep the university open. There are some universities like Howard University and Johns Hopkins that have opted to go only digitally this semester here, but places like here, the University of Arizona, are intending to work towards that hybrid model where some students are going to be able to start going back into the classroom, and if all goes well, at an increasing rate. You know, we should note yesterday was the first day of testing here on campus, and university officials tell us just 1 out of 600 individuals that came in actually tested positive, which is a suggestion that they're starting off on a good note. It's how does the campus go forward from here?
You're going to insert this into your nostril about...
So, Vaughn, it's going to be a very different start to the year. School isn't going to be quite like it was when students left, or for those who are gearing up for going back to the school for the first time, it's probably not what they were expecting to be showing up for. How do they feel about it? What are they telling you about going back to a semester that looks like this?
Yeah, we've talked to several of the students, and there's a lot of big question marks that they also have in their mind. Take a listen to some of our conversation.
It's going to be entirely different, obviously. There's not going to be much to do, I feel like, and not going to be very many people on campus, obviously.
I feel confident in the school doing the best they can. I just don't know how students will react.
The last woman you heard from, Isis Farah, she is a junior this year, and you heard her say that she believed the university was doing everything in their power. She said at the same time she is concerned herself. She's actively living with an elderly individual in her family. She's also a theater major, and she said that she wants to go to class because there is an integral part of theater in terms of being in physical contact with one another. And she said that that's sort of where they are. She said she's actually been laid off 3 different jobs this year, from a restaurant as well as 2 other jobs. And she said she understands the impact that COVID spread can have on a community. And she said that that's where she wants other students to understand how imperative it is, especially when younger people are largely showing asymptomatic signs, how imperative it is in order to not only keep the university open, but also to keep individuals like her own family who she lives with safe.
Vaughn, so many things that those students are going through, such a tough year for them on so many levels. So let's talk about the inevitable here. You bring students back. Someone is probably going to get the coronavirus. What happens when there's a case on campus, and what's the university's plan depending on when it happens and where they are into the year?
The university has turned 3 dormitories into isolation dorms. So if an individual tests positive, they're going to go to that isolation dorm where the university will deliver 3 days a meal. And with the intended impact is that they're able to stop the spread and essentially try their best to operate in as safe environment as possible. And at that point, then they're going to go back to contact tracing everybody who that student came in contact with. You know, they understand the significance here, too, because this is also the largest employer in southern Arizona, about 15,000 faculty here. And that's why I was having a conversation with University of Arizona President Bobby Robbins. And I want to let you listen to part of the conversation because he also understands the impact here.
I am confident that we've got the best possible systems in place with extensive testing, great contact tracing, and the capacity to isolate. I'm also confident that we can continue to say, wash your hands, cover your face, and stay as far away from as many people as possible. If we maintain those 6 guiding principles, we'll do a lot to be able to keep an outbreak from happening.
President Robbins told me that they would be prepared to de-escalate and essentially make this an online semester if these numbers were to get out of hand. But as you heard him say, they are encouraging folks to take this seriously and do their best to keep this university open here because they want to give students the opportunity to continue and expand their education, the whole point of the university. At the same time, we're talking about a very social environment, and you've seen every age group struggle to a large extent across the country, being able to socially distant and be cognizant of what is around them. I think this is the country's biggest test perhaps yet.
Yeah, it is quite a test for sure. Vaughn Hilliard with the latest from the University of Arizona. Thank you for showing us what it looks like there as they try to get kids back to school.
Thanks, my friend.